It's 6 p.m. on the clock and you're watching TSN. My name is Natalia Yarmola. In this broadcast, we've prepared the first summaries of this Tuesday. The death of an entire family in the Sumy region. There is a 2-day mourning period in the Krasnopil community. The Russians struck the village of Chernechchyna around 3 in the morning. Combat drones hit a 2-story apartment building and a private house where a couple lived with their 2 small children. A fire broke out and no one was able to escape. Rescuers pulled the bodies of 4 victims from under the rubble. We already know their names. They are the father, 35-year-old Alexander Lisnichenko, his 26-year-old wife Elena, and their 2 children, Denis and Ihor. The village council shared photos of the boys. They were 6 and 4 years old. It is known that the family had recently moved to the Sumy region after their house was destroyed during shelling. Residential buildings, infrastructure, and injured civilians. More on the situation in the regions after Russian shelling coming up next. In the Chernihiv region, there are power outages and train delays. Russian drones struck critical and transport infrastructure, as well as an industrial enterprise in the Nizhyn district. As a result of the attack, several settlements were left without power, and suburban and regional trains are delayed. In Kostiantynivka, Russian FPV drones targeted civilians, killing 2 on the spot, while 2 others with injuries were taken to the hospital by ambulance. In Podrushkivka, the occupiers struck with 10 FPV drones. There too a person was killed and there is significant destruction in the city. And in Lyman, the enemy attacked an ambulance with FPV drones. The number of injured in Bilozerka, Kherson region has risen to 3. The Russians shelled the villages with artillery. In Kherson, a church was hit right during the liturgy. They also damaged 20 apartment buildings and private houses. An administrative building and a museum were also affected. Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region has been closed to entry. There is no electricity, water, or gas there, and none of the critical infrastructure is functioning. This was reported by the head of the Kupyansk local military administration. According to Andriy Bezyedin, there are still 1,640 local residents in the community who refuse to leave. At the same time, enemy reconnaissance and sabotage groups disguised in civilian clothes are being observed in the city. Neither ambulances nor rescuers can enter the city. And the only way for civilians to get out is to walk into the city on foot. There, volunteers or the police can pick them up and transport them to a safer place. Russian troops continue their assaults in the Donbas but are suffering critical losses. The Institute for the Study of War reports enemy advances in the Siversk direction. At the same time, Ukrainian defenders are achieving successes in the Dobropillia area, where some Russian units are encircled. In this area, the enemy is experiencing problems with fuel and lubricant supplies due to Ukrainian strikes on Russian facilities at oil refineries. On the Novopavlivka axis, the armed forces of Ukraine are beginning to push back Russian troops. Ukrainian drones are blocking the advance of Russian troops along logistical routes, so Russian forces are moving on foot within a 20-kilometer zone from the front line to avoid detection by drones. As a result, only 1 out of 10 Russian soldiers reaches Ukrainian positions. Despite heavy losses, the Russians have occupied the village of Poltavka in the Donetsk region. This was reported by analysts from Deep State. The Russians have also made advances near Novo-Ivanivka in the Zaporizhzhia region and in the Serebryansk forestry in the Luhansk region. The enemy continues to press near Siversk with the aim of capturing the city. Analysts note that a large grey zone has formed in this area. The enemy manages to infiltrate through the positions of Ukrainian fighters, but the Russians are unable to secure a foothold on the ground or amass forces for further advancement, thanks to Ukrainian drones that are hunting enemy infantry. Constant shelling, a shortage of workers, and on top of that, a record low harvest. In the Kryvyi district of Dnipropetrovsk region, they are currently harvesting sunflowers. Farmers say they've put all their effort and resources into the fields, but what they harvest per hectare is measured in kilograms instead of tons. So the next sowing season is under threat. They explained why to TSN correspondent Anastasia Neverna.
Mr. Alexander has been in agriculture for almost half a century. He looks closely at the field of sunflowers, touches them, and tries to understand why this year's harvest is so disappointing.
There's nothing good about it. It's not the kind of result you'd expect after giving it your all, after investing everything. The field is clean. Everything was done right, with fertilizers, with herbicides, just as it should be.
Each sunflower is stunted and it should have been 2 or even 3 times bigger.
A meter, 60 to 70 centimeters tall, with a head 18 to 20 centimeters across. 20
centimeters. And here, how much is it?
Here it's 5 to 6. We are bigger. It will grow. There's nothing there.
They even doubted whether to harvest these fields, says the farmer, because the costs won't be covered by the harvested crop. However, the combines still go out to work. In 10 years of work, combine operator Serhiy admits he has never seen such a low yield.
Before we used to harvest 3 tons, and now it's only 200 to 300 kilograms per hectare. I think that's basically nothing. It's not even worth the diesel fuel.
And this situation is the same throughout the entire Kryvyi district, not only with sunflowers, but also with wheat, barley and rapeseed. Moreover, because of the drought, farmers are not sowing winter crops.
As of today, currently in September, the vast majority of the land has been sown. However, there is no significant available moisture content. We will be appealing for possible compensation for the losses.
And this is on top of the constant shelling.
It's about 12 to 18 kilometers to the enemy. That area, of course, suffers from shelling. Sometimes drones strike there, and some areas are shelled with heavy artillery.
But that's nothing, says Mr. Alexander. He has fields in neighboring Kherson region, and not all of them have been detained yet.
We have just one field. One field is 200 hectares. There were about 1,500 anti-tank mines alone there. And there's another field we haven't even entered yet.
As they retreated, the occupiers mined every inch of land. Mr. Alexander himself has been blown up twice.
There was a spot there where I wasn't quite sure. The mechanic was blown up, but everyone else managed to get out safely. These are the kinds of traps you can't even see. They're packed so densely. That's one row, and then right next to it there's another. That's just one field.
And another problem for both regions, farmers say, is the lack of people.
Who is working for us now? Either people of retirement age or, well, I just recently took on a young guy for this. We try to recruit from the vocational school. We reserve people whenever possible.
Serhiy is just such a young tractor driver, a student from Yonka. He just turned 19. He started working a few months ago, right at harvest time. So he picked up the new equipment quickly, right out in the field.
I didn't learn on these. These are much newer tractors. I learned on the old ones. They're older than I am.
And even though year after year farmers say it only gets harder, they keep working. They believe the weather will improve and the enemy will leave them in peace. And they hope that the next harvest will reward the farmers. Anastasia Nevirna, Vladislav Komishin, Dnipropetrovsk region, TSN, 1+1.
The European Commission will allocate an additional 2 billion euros for Ukrainian drones. President Ursula von der Leyen announced this at a joint press conference with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte before the start of the European Commission's board meeting, in which he is participating. There, the issue of EU security is being discussed. Right now, decisive support for Ukraine can lead to a turning point in the war, von der Leyen emphasized. Earlier, European Commissioner for Defense Andrius Kubilius called for the urgent establishment of a drone wall on the eastern flank of the European Union due to the threat posed by Russian drones, relying on technologies that have already proven effective in Ukraine.
Europe must respond effectively and collectively to Russian drone provocations at our borders. That is why we are proposing immediate action to make drones a part of our guard on the eastern flank. We must address this together with Ukraine and NATO.
Right now, this drone project is very much needed, very timely. Because in the end, we cannot afford to spend millions of euros or dollars on missiles to shoot down every drone that costs just a few $1,000s.
Commenting on the issue of creating a drone wall, the NATO Secretary General noted that it is currently unknown who is behind the drone incursions into Denmark. As for Poland and Estonia, Rutte says it is obvious that it is the Russians. But as for what happened in Denmark, experts are still investigating. Let me remind you, there have already been several drone intrusion incidents in Denmark. They were spotted over airports and military facilities, which forced a temporary suspension of air traffic. Ukraine and its financial support, as well as the defense of Europe, will be discussed at the informal European Council summit in Copenhagen on October 1st. France, Germany, and Sweden are sending military personnel and anti-drone systems there this week to strengthen security. Politico writes that defense issues were previously left out of the traditional agenda of the European Union, but Putin's provocations and Trump's unpredictable behavior are changing approaches. Ursula von der Leyen called for the creation of joint systems to counter Russian drones and aircraft, as well as for a new financial package to support Ukraine, including by using frozen Russian assets. The summit will also discuss a plan to bypass Hungary, which is blocking Ukraine's accession to the EU, and they hope to reach an official decision at the second summit at the end of October. It is expected that President Zelensky will join the summit participants via video link. He was trading passports. The security service of Ukraine and the national police detained a diplomat who was helping Russians move freely around Europe. At the beginning of the full-scale invasion, he was working at one of the embassies in a European country. According to the investigation, the scheme was simple. The embassy employee took orders from Russians and helped them obtain Ukrainian passports. This made it possible for them to move freely around Europe. To find clients, he built an entire network of intermediaries. During searches, the diplomat's mobile phone was seized, containing evidence of his illegal activities. Information is being checked to determine whether the legalized Russians are involved in intelligence or subversive activities of Russian special services. A preventive measure is to be chosen for the suspect. Water up to the waist. Rains have flooded Odesa. In some places, the water level reaches a meter. In the morning, several roads became impassable. In the city, several trolleybus and tram routes had to be temporarily cancelled. Now the rain has eased, the water is gradually receding. What damage did the bad weather cause in Odesa? Our correspondent Olena Chernihiv will tell you more.
The southern districts of Odesa are suffering the most from the rain. The rain is moderate, but it hasn't stopped since last night. And in some places, 2 months' worth of rainfall has already fallen. The storm drains couldn't cope and the streets were flooded. This street, for example, is completely impassable. The road has been blocked by a patrol police car. In the deepest spot, the water is up to the waist, say drivers who took the risk and tried to get through the flooded areas. They drove out of the parking lot into the yard and got stuck.
The engine stalled, everything shut down. Water gradually started to seep into the cabin. By the time it reached the edge, I had already gotten out of the car. I thought that a 3-liter diesel would help, but it didn't. I saw other cars making it through and hoped that my car with such an engine could get across.
There are streets in Odessa that flood every time after a heavy rain. The stall where Miss Tatiana works is located on one of them.
Every year, it's the same thing. We always had him here. Now he's gotten sick. He always wore a fishing suit because in that spot where the drains are, the water is almost up to your waist. And he would go in and clean it. It's like a pit here, basically. And there are 2 drains, one here and the other over there by that parapet, a little left. And we closed the doors when it was completely full. Now it's gone down a bit, but cars are still driving by and everything ends up in the store. Our store is constantly flooded.
Utility workers are trying to deal with the aftermath of the bad weather. The city council reports 45 units of equipment and over 300 specialists who are trying to clear the storm drains. Especially in low-lying areas where that's not enough, the water is being pumped out.
Such a situation is observed in some places. The sewage system needs to be cleared there. The utility workers will come now, clear it out, and in 5 minutes the water will be gone.
The south part of the region was also affected. There, due to the bad weather, there was an emergency power outage, and part of the Odesa district was left without electricity. Olena Chernihiv, Ivan Savchenko, TSN 1+1.
With fists. For a remark, in the capital, a Mercedes driver attacked a cyclist. According to the national police, a 44-year-old entrepreneur from the Kyiv region parked his car in the bike lane. For this, he received a remark from the passing cyclist. The incident was recorded by a surveillance camera. The driver reacted aggressively. He hit the cyclist on the head several times, then dragged him to the roadside and fled. The 40-year-old Kyiv resident suffered a closed head injury and a fracture of the temporal bone. He is currently in serious condition. The attacker has been detained and faces up to 8 years in prison for his actions. A dance record in Krasnopil. The largest mass performance of the Polisian polka, Pechonoe Porosya, was recorded in Rivne region. There, during the Ukrainian folk choreography festival Polka Diversity, more than 1,000 people danced a spectacular dance. In addition to local groups, there were dancers from Kyiv, Kropivnitsky and Khmelnytsky region. The participants ranged in age from 2 to 88 years old. All of them together danced the polka. This is a playful folk dance that was performed at weddings, christenings, and various festive gatherings where roast piglet was a traditional dish. That's where the name of the dance comes from. featuring the distinctive Polisian dialect. With that, I say goodbye to you. But the Tansen team is already preparing more news for you right now. Solomia Vitvichka will share them with you as usual at 7:30 p.m.